push it just a little bit more. Once it got intense, I got in a good rhythm, but whenever it's chill, just keep that tempo going. Anybody have any questions? It's time for us to stop. All good? Cool. Israel, let me talk with you, and then y'all can go grab some foods. Just keep it away from you. What's up, man? What's up, Oh my gosh, I cut it like 3 weeks ago. Now it's growing out. Yeah, I'm about to cut it again. So I'm trying to make the real estate or the landscape like you heard that? Like I used to have like really long hair, but then like when I see a video of myself, like and I lower my head, I'm like, man.
That happened already, huh?
Because then it just brings too much attention to the. How are you doing this morning? Doing good. Good to see you. Good to see you. How are you doing, man?
Pretty good, you? Doing good. Doing good, man.
I'm tired, but I'm good, man. How are you doing?
Good, Mark. Yeah, good to see you too, bro.
That's just like side part. It's okay. So here's like a rule of thumb that we always play by. 10 minutes before somebody tells you that you're going to use like 3:45. So what is that? 35 minutes before. Be ready. Like when it rolls, your sound okay. That's spot. And this spot is where it's at. Whenever I use it, just let me know when you're like close by or something like that. Because then it. Is there a lot of things that I'm like, I don't know. Like, I possibly know. So like they came and they all felt bad. So half the pieces are made a community with the rest of it. That guy that maybe right as soon as we started the show, like that's when we started recording. Like tell us to show up. So things could have used all of this. Just silly show. And then put today. Reverb in this case. It's like usually like a giant camera. But so yeah, so like 10 minutes before my house, it's easier for everybody because that's like the main shoot. So like we can wait at Mark's house is where Kenyon lives. Sit right there, about, you know, what is 5 minutes? What is it? Just sit and chill, right?
Ready for an even more rewarding Target run? Introducing Target Run. It's full of benefits, free to join, and isn't another card. Just sign up for the Target app or learn more at target.com/red. Some restrictions apply.
Oh, you do?
Pair of scissors.
No.
up, Victor?
Hey, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Doing good, girl. Just working here in the river.
You know, when Kyle gets back, Phil told me, but I forgot.
Is he gone?
Yeah, he's on a cruise.
Oh, he did. Oh, look at him.
Said that he was gonna be back like Monday or Tuesday or something like that. So he's gonna be missing like both services. Thought that maybe he told you. Woo! Oh man.
How have you been, bro?
That's good.
Good?
Yeah, where's the kids at? Where's what's her name?
Ellen?
Vicky.
Vicky?
Yeah, where's she at?
She's home. She's home.
She's home on a date? Come on now, you can't allow that. You gotta be like, stop, what Phil does to us, but he don't make us get up. We see, haven't seen her in a while.
Yeah, I know.
Long time. Like literally.
She goes to upper room in the afternoon. That's why.
She goes to where?
Upper room, church.
Oh, okay.
In the afternoon, so sometimes she doesn't show up in the morning, you know.
She's betraying us. Yeah, I see how it is. Tell her I see how it is next time. See her.
Yes, later.
As músicas de hoje, tem duas que é música nova.
Eu já acabei de fazer.
Eu aletrei, assim.
Não sei o que aconteceu.
Ah, pô.
O sub tá muito baixo. Eu já subi um monte aí. Sei lá, não sei o que aconteceu.
Check, sound. 1, 2. 1, 2, 8, check. Sound. Hello, 1, 2.
Victor, can you do announcements today?
Yes.
All we have is just recap the bash, if you would,
Okay.
which was Wednesday,
Mhm.
the big bash, and then community groups tonight, if you would.
Tonight.
Yeah.
Kyle's place.
6:30. Let's get together this week. Give me a day. You guys can.
Yeah, definitely.
You're all moved in,
We will.
right? All right.
Right now we're set.
Good. I want to get with you this week too, Byron. I got a problem with you.
I don't know. But if you the reason you're married here, you're the way you're married. But when you're married here, it was a long 3 years. And a lot of people said, I'm not trying to do it. Now it's all good in the house. Their little house is so good. It's old. It must be like 70 years old. It's got all these little yeah. I'm going to put a little party here.
Mexer assim no nosso, no som não mexeu, mas talvez. O que a gente fez? Ele veio com o speaker dele, rodado, conectaram o nosso, ligou o nosso, aí o som foi daqui e tá bombando, né?
Alguém acabou de escutar os dados que estavam na
Não sei.
A
Byron,
gente chegou na quarta e não foi.
you know where the decorations are?
They're under.
Aí botei o pé. Não, o track é o computador. O computador tá no track. Naquele. Aí nesse pad tá o Marco no piano. Isso, os três. Começar 5 minutos de countdown, né? Vai fazer o countdown. 11. Pode work. If I get the picture. Is that a good thing?
Yeah, sorry.
All right. What's up, man? They didn't take you on the cruise?
Introducing Target
Hopefully.
Red.
Yep, last night was my first
It's
time.
full of benefits. Free to join, and there's no card necessary. Just scan your wallet barcode in the Target app. Visit target.com/red to learn more. Or hey, download the Target app.
Yeah, last night was like fun. No, I just what they were talking about. I was gonna write something about it, but what they were talking about? They were talking about one church, but then they were also like talking about how they don't like what they're doing. I was like, because everybody's just trying to keep up with their image.
Can we do speaking lights for the countdown? Bring it down some.
That's it.
Is this good for worship? Or do you want the back lights off too?
I would turn maybe the last set. Is that the last set that's on, or is there?
Or just leave upstairs on? Because upstairs is on too.
What time?
Good morning, everybody. How's everybody doing this morning? I want to invite you guys to stand to your feet right there where you are. We're going to kick off our morning with some songs of praise and worship to Jesus. You guys excited? Yeah. Oh, we look to the sun, set our eyes on our Savior, see the image of love, sing His praises forever. Oh, we look to the sun. Salvation, sailing through the dead of night. See the kingdom moves into color and the speed of light. Freedom, saving the atmosphere. As the shadows fade into nothing as the day appears. Beyond the skies above, love reaching out for the everlasting one, Jesus our God. Oh, we look to the sun, set our eyes on our Savior, see the image of love, sing His praises forever. Oh, we look to the sun. Creation, waiting until kingdom come. See the hope of heaven shining like the rising sun. Not forever, lifted up the desert light. There's a healing there from the endless light. The skies above, love reaching out for the everlasting one. Oh, Jesus our God. Oh, we look to the sun, set our eyes on our Savior, sing His praises forever. Set our eyes on our Savior, see the image of love, sing His praises forever. Oh, look to the sun. Yeah. Oh, look to the sun. Somebody ready to shout some Jesus this morning? I hope that we don't look to the sun, the S-U-N, kind of like hurt your eyes, you know? But look into the Son, the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit today, so amen? That's awesome, that's awesome. You guys enjoyed that new song today? It's a good song for us, right? There was a moment when the lights went out, when death proclaimed its victory. The King of love had given up His life. The darkest day of history. There on the cross they made for sinners. Every curse His blood atoned. breath and it was finished. But not the end we could have known. For the earth began to shake, and the railroads a sacrifice was made as the heavens roll. Oh, hail King Jesus! Oh, hail the Lord of heaven and earth! Oh, hail King Jesus! Oh, hail the Savior of the world! There was a moment in the sky, flash of light breaking through. All was lost across eternity. The King of life is on the move. For in a dark cold looking after us, man, and forever change. Oh, hail King Jesus! Oh, hail the Lord of heaven and earth! Oh, hail King Jesus! Oh, hail the Savior of the world! Oh, hail King Jesus! Oh, hail the Lord of heaven and earth! Oh, hail King Jesus! Oh, hail the Savior of the world! Love me, love is for the King is every tongue confess that He is Lord. Lift up your shout, let us join forever, singing, oh, we're singing, oh, oh, hail King Jesus! 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 Oh, hail the Lord of heaven and earth! Oh, hail King Jesus! Oh, hail the Savior of Kings. Be lifted up. Be lifted higher. Be lifted up. Be lifted higher. Let's sing, be lifted up. Be lifted up. Oh, be lifted higher. Oh, be lifted up. Be lifted higher. 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 Be lifted up. Be lifted higher. Be lifted up. Be lifted higher. So let our praises fill the temple. Let our praises fill the temple. Let our praises fill the temple. For you are good. Be lifted up. Be lifted higher. Be lifted up. Be lifted higher. Oh, hail King Jesus. Oh, hail the Lord of heaven and earth. Oh, hail King Jesus. Oh, hail the Savior of the world. Oh, hail King Jesus. Oh, hail the Lord of heaven and earth. Oh, hail King Jesus. Oh, hail the Savior of the world.
My heart and taken me over, and all I want to be with you forever, with you forever. Your love has reached my heart and taken me over, and all I want is to be with you forever, with you forever. So pull me a little closer, take me a little deeper. I wanna know your heart, I wanna know your heart. 'Cause your love is so much sweeter than anything I've tasted. I wanna know your heart, I wanna know your my heart and take me over, and all that should be forever, forever. So hold me a little closer, take me a little deeper. I wanna know your heart, I wanna know your heart. Your love is so much sweeter than anything I tasted. I wanna know your heart, I wanna know your heart. So pull me a little closer, take me a little deeper. I wanna know your heart, I wanna know your heart. Love is so much sweeter than anything I've tasted. I wanna know your heart, I wanna know your heart, I wanna know your How great your love is for me. How great is your love. How great your love is for me. How great is your love. How great your love is for me. How great is your love. How great your love is for me. How great is hold me a little closer, take me a little deeper. I wanna know you, I wanna know your heart. 'Cause your love is so much sweeter than anything I've tasted. I wanna know your heart, I wanna know your heart. So hold me a little closer, take me a little deeper. I wanna know your heart, I wanna know your heart. 'Cause your love is so much sweeter than anything I've tasted. I wanna know your heart, I wanna know your heart.
now, God. We thank you for this time that we have when we worship you, God. I just pray, God, that throughout this week, you will continue to bless us, God. You will move with us, God. And I just pray, God, that you will bless this message, God, as our food will preach. And I just pray, God, that you will touch our hearts. You will give to us a new experience today. In your name I pray. Amen. Turn to your neighbor and say, you look good today.
Even if it is like maybe, I'm
That's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you, worship team. Good morning, all. It's good to see you all here. It's a good day to be here. And it's a privilege, it's an honor to be in the house of the Lord and to have this freedom to come and to worship His name. So I want to give you some announcements today. First, I want to recap. We had last Wednesday our big bash here. It was an amazing service here with the youth and other church that came together. So I want to give a hand, guys. Let's put a hand together for all the volunteers, people that were cooking, Mr. Reggie, coordinated the cooking, our youth, that you guys did a great and amazing job. Even though we had some issues, and you know what? That happened? Jesus allows this to soften our hearts, you know? So that we have some problems, technical problems, but that is part of the work with the Lord. Make us humble ourselves. Amen? So what is an amazing service? We have, I think over around 150 students here. At the end, they came to the altar call and they received the word, received the message that was preached. And that is what we are doing here. We are working to reach their hearts, and we are sowing a seed of hope and life in their hearts. Sometimes we can't see right away the fruit, but it's there. The seed is there. The word is there. And one day we're going to see that word coming up and transform their lives. So I want to thank you, everybody who work and make that possible. One thing we have today, one announcement, just one announcement. That's amazing. We do have community group today at 6:30 at the same place, at the same time, at the Kyle's house. Even though they're not here, I've heard that they are in a cruise. Come on. That's good life, isn't it? Huh? You had a hard work, a good service, and after that, I'm going to a cruise. Come on, Kyle. You should be here. But we bless his life. He works a lot for the church, and we appreciate his life, his family. But we are going to have this community group today at 6:30. We're going to have a great time again. All right? So I want to give it right now for our brother, Coach. He's going to pray for our tithes and offerings. And it's so good to be here, guys.
You guys, if you'll bow your heads. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this Sunday morning that we're allowed to be here. We thank you for just the opportunity to come and hear your word, Lord, and worship you. We ask that you bless the members that aren't here today, Lord. Look over them. Look over Kyle and his family, Lord. We thank you for this opportunity to give to you, Lord, and so we can continue our mission. We love you. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Good morning. I hope everyone is doing well this morning. It's good to be in church on a Sunday morning, isn't it? Yes. All right. It's good to be here, isn't it, Danny? It's good to have everyone here. We are excited to be here this morning. Kyle's on that cruise, so we're not going to pray for him or Haley. Hey, they got the baby with them, though, so they're not going to have a great time, right? They're going to have that baby, that crying baby the whole week. So it serves them right, I say. So we did have a good bash. Thank you, Reggie and Shirley, for cooking so much for us. We appreciate that. You know what? It means a lot. And everyone that put in so much. And Reggie's been working next door with some of the boys on, we're going to rent this building next door. and have a daycare in there. So he's been working for the last 2 weekends to make that a reality. And so I've seen how much hard work he puts in there. And I appreciate not just Reggie, but every one of the guys that have come up yesterday. Christy and Star were here to help us. And so it's pretty...
Good job.
Do what, Devin?
Good job, sir.
Devin, Armando. Is there anyone else? No. Okay. It was good, though, to get some of that work done. You know, God blesses that stuff. You think you're out there slaving away, and you think, what good does it do? Sometimes. Do we ever feel that way? Sometimes just going to church, we wonder, hey, what good does it do? We get discouraged. What good am I doing, really? But you know, there is a difference being made. There are lives being affected and changed, and that will continue to happen. Just like Wednesday when there were so many kids here. Their lives were affected, whether you can see it or not, whether you can see the evidence of that today or not. Just like the parable of the seeds being sown. Some of it falls on stony ground. Some of it falls among the weeds. Some of it falls in good ground, and it grows up and it produces fruit. And that is exactly what we're striving to do, isn't it? That's what your life should be striving to do. Today we're looking at some of the parables. I love the way Jesus taught with parables. You know, I'm not a good storyteller. You ever notice that? Anyone that sat through a service here maybe has been able to tell that a little bit, that, hey, that Phil, you know, he'd be a great guy. He'd be a good pastor if only he could really tell a story, right? And I'm worse with jokes, so I'm not going to tell any jokes either, okay? But Jesus was a master at storytelling, and it captured people. It captured his audience. They would be drawn into what he was trying to teach them in that story. And in the same time, those parables would teach a truth, a biblical truth. And so you think of the parable of the seed falling among the different grounds and how that brought up fruit. That tells us a truth about how we sow the seed. You think about the parable of, what's another one? Anyone know any parables? The prodigal son. That's a good one, right? Kyle just taught about that one. And so we can get an idea of our Father and the wayward son, right? And there's one about the guy that was pulling down all his barns to build bigger barns and build greater a kingdom here on earth. And the Bible says, hey, don't you know your soul's going to be required? It's a parable about, hey, we got to be prepared for the future. There's so many good stories that Jesus has in those parables. And that's one I wanted to look at today. You know, Kyle inspired me. Does he ever inspire y'all?
Yeah.
Totally.
We're not broadcasting live, you'll be happy to know, so he can't watch this and know whose hands are raised or not raised to inspire, that you've been inspired by him. But he taught about the prodigal son, and Kenji, I'm going to talk about that today as well. But there's an aspect of it I wanted to look at that we usually don't look at. You know, every one of the stories that Jesus teaches, there's a main point, I think, in those parables, but then there's always other sub-points and subplots that are going on that also teach truth if you really get into them. Hey, that's the way the Word of God works, isn't it? You really start getting into it and you start seeing all these layers of truth and layers of things that we can learn. That's just the way the Word works. That's because the Word is a living thing. It is truth. Jesus says, I am the Word. And so as we look here, we can see Jesus all through that. Because you saw his life. That's exactly the way his life was. People looked at him and made a judgment call about him and said, hey, man, that guy's a loser. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He's crazy. Hey, they didn't realize who he was. And when he taught them and when he lived his life, it was so many different layers of things that people started to begin to understand. And so I do want to look at the parable of the prodigal son. We've all heard this story. We can relate to it because I can assure you that every one of us have been a prodigal at some point, have we not?
That's
right. I don't care how new in the faith you are or how long you've been a Christian. Hey, we've all been a prodigal. We've all walked away at some point and said, you know what? This isn't worth it. This is not worth it anymore. I can go and live my life and be just fine without all of this nonsense at the church, right? All of this nonsense with other Christians that I have to deal with. All this nonsense that God is trying to pile on me. So we've all been a prodigal at some point, and hopefully we've all come back at some point. That's the basic overall story of the prodigal son. That God always welcomes us back. But we know that there's other subplots here. Take, for instance, the prodigal son older brother. Right now, this guy's a real loser, isn't he? Okay, maybe not. He's a really a good, if you looked at him, man, he was a pretty good guy. And he was faithful to the Father. He was always there. He was a godly man. And yet when his brother comes back from his being away and doing his crazy thing, what does the older brother do? He says, hey, Dad, why are you getting all excited about that kid coming back? And you know what that's a picture of? That's a picture of back in Jesus' day, of maybe a Pharisee looking at someone that's trying to come to God, trying to change and turn their life around and say, man, that guy, look at him. Look at what he did. He's not worth it. He's not worth it. And even Christians today are being judgmental like that, right? Someone that's been off in the world and screwed up maybe and coming back and us saying, hey, they're not worth it. Don't even waste any time on them. That's the picture of the older brother. So there's a subplot there. And that's not even what I want to look at today. I want to look at the dad. I want to look at this father and see what kind of father is this really? I mean, what's he thinking? Do you ever look at this guy in this story and say, man, what are you thinking, Father, after what you've done here? Can you imagine, parents, your kids coming to you and saying, I want my inheritance now? Can you imagine that? Justin, what if all 4 of your kids came to you and said, hey, I want my inheritance now, Dad, okay? I want it today. I'm not going to wait for you to die. I want it right now. Isn't that weird? I mean, that's weird even in Jesus' day. That wasn't something that just happened all the time. Can you imagine that, parents, if you're one of your children or whoever came up to you and said, hey, I want my inheritance now. I want you to pay me now what's coming to me. I don't want to wait till you die. I want the money today. I can imagine going to my dad and saying that. He would just have, I don't know what he would have done, laughed at me perhaps, thrown me out of the house maybe, I don't know. I don't know what he would have done. You can imagine, hey, what kind of business is this? And coming to me asking for your inheritance before I die. That's not going to happen. And I can imagine my own reaction if, hey, I don't have any kids, but I have a bunch of people that are like sons to me, okay? Sons and daughters. If one of them came to me and said, hey, I think you'll leave me something. I want that inheritance today before you die. Now, to them, I would just laugh. Where's Levante at? Kyle, if he were here, I'd laugh at him. All you guys, I'd just laugh at you. Jose, forget it, man. No way. No inheritance until I die, okay? Right, Reggie? Is that the way it works? That's the way it should work. But the most unusual thing about our story today is the father's response. And I wanted to read just a couple of verses. Luke chapter 15, verses 11 and 12. It says, and he said there was a man who had 2 sons. And the younger of them said to his father, Father, give me the share of property that is coming to me. So there's the request. Hey, Dad, give it to me. And the implication is now. I want it now. But the crazy thing is the father's response. We don't even see any words spoken here, do we? And the father, and he divided his property between them. No discussion. No reasoning. No, hey, do you think that's a good idea, son? There was none of that. All we see is immediately Dad takes the steps necessary to divide his property so that his young son could get the inheritance that he wanted right now. We see the father doing that. Now, what do you think of the father that would do such a thing? I want to know your honest opinion about that. What kind of father would, understanding that this son is young and what he wants, that he would actually do that? Can you imagine the trouble that the father would have to go to liquidate his estate to the point that he would give his son cash for the part that was coming to him? I mean, it wasn't like he could take the family farm and just give it half. That's not what the son wanted. The son wanted the money. He said, I've got to go, give me the portion that's coming to me, and I'm going to go do what I want to do. And the father has to have a bunch of cash on hand that he hands over to the son. He has to sell stuff perhaps to come up with cash to give to the son. He has to mortgage the property, come up with a loan or something to give the cash to the son. He's got to take some steps that are not easy. I mean, this is not an easy thing to do. Now, I understand this is just a parable, right? This is just a story. But Jesus is trying to get a point across to you and me about what's going on here in the Father's hearts. And as we look at the Father, we might think, Dad, what are you crazy? Or what are you thinking, trying to come up with this cash to give to this son? Why don't you just tell him to get lost? Why don't you just slap him away and say, you know what? I can't believe you'd even ask me a stupid question like that. Why don't you go? Why aren't you like your older brother? He doesn't ask me for things like that. He loves me. He wants to be here. He works the family business, and you do not. What are you thinking? I wonder what this kid's name was, huh? I'd start calling him names. I would just start making fun of him. Justin, that's just what I would do too. But the Father loves the Son, right? Hey, which of your kids do you love the most? We were asking this question not too long ago, right? Which one? You see, if I asked any of you parents, you would say, hey, none of them do I love the most. None of them are my favorites, right? I love them all. And that's the way this father was. That's the way he was. He loved both of his sons. Enough to teach this one. Enough to help this younger son. Enough, apparently, to liquidate half of his estate to give to him. And I think, man, why didn't this father say no? Why didn't he say no to his son? Doesn't he know what's best for him? Doesn't he know and I don't know how old this kid was, 20-year-old maybe? I don't know. Doesn't he know what a 20-year-old will do with the money? Doesn't he know he can't handle that? He can't handle that kind of, all of a sudden having that kind of wealth. He just can't manage it. And now you're just going to hand that over to him? Dad, why don't you say no? Why don't you say, hey, you don't need to do that right now? We tell our kids that, right? How many times do you tell your kids no? I'm not going to give that to you. They come up and ask for a new car. I want a brand new car, Dad. What do you tell them? Hey, I want a nice new pair of shoes. I want whatever, right? All kinds of things. We can say no, can't we? It's not hard. Our dad here didn't say no. He didn't say, son, you don't know what you're asking. Son, you don't know what's going to happen to you. So what kind of dad is this really when you look at it? Why didn't he wait? You know, I think of inheritances. People, they put a lot of thought into that, don't they? When you write your will, you don't have a will here? You don't have to tell me that. I know a guy, though, that he knows his kids can't handle a bunch of wealth all at once, so he's written his will so that everything goes into a trust, and the kids can't get it until they're like 40. I mean, we know, right? Kids can't handle money sometimes, right? I probably couldn't have. You just throw $1 million, you think of lottery winners, and you think of all the money that they just get thrown on, and how most of those people, within a few years, they're broke because they just can't manage it. They just can't do it. And when you look at this guy, he's freely given his son all this money. And the very thing you might expect would come to pass does. The son gets the money, goes off to wherever, right? Goes off to the place he wants to be, wherever that place is. His friends are there. He's going to have a good time. Trenton, he's going off to enjoy life, okay? And when he does, he has a good time. His friends appreciate him, right? They're hanging around him because he's paying the bills. He's taking all that money that Dad gave him, and he's going to blow it. And the young man wastes his inheritance on partying, on foolishness until it's all gone. All very predictable, I think. All very understandable. We're not looking at this story thinking, hey, that's a twist. I would never have expected that. Well, that's to be expected. And so why did the father allow this to happen, knowing what the most likely outcome would be? Maybe he should have practiced tough love by denying the son. Maybe he should have said no, not right now. But he didn't. But just realize that this father knows the son better than anyone else. He is close to his son. You parents are probably close to your kids. You know the relationship there. You know how much your kids mean to you. And that is exactly this father. He looks at those kids, and his young son especially, and he knows. what he's going through. He understands where he's at in life. And he has a very close relationship, knows him intimately. And he's been looking at his son for years leading up to this event. He's been looking at the discontent that's been building in his son. He's been looking at a son that's not happy working the family business. A son that's not happy just being there with the father. He's not happy with that. He wants more. He wants the exciting life. He wants the life that is off in that other town where there's fun, where there's new people, where it's all brand new, man, where it's exciting. It's not the family business. It's not the family farm. It's not messing around with the animals. It's not messing around with the crops. Not messing around with dad and brother. It's out having a good time. And dad sees this building in his son over the years. They were not told they had conversations, but I believe they did. They would have talked about this. Dad would have come to son and said, man, I want to pray with you about where you're headed in life. Man, let me help you. Let me give you some wisdom and some direction. Anyone's dads ever do that to you? Hey, let me tell you something, right? They'll come to you. I try to talk to some of the kids that I know, or young people, young adults, I guess. I don't know how much they listen. Armando, how much do they listen? Not much? Okay. That's what I thought. I suspected that. That's the way kids are, right? Sometimes they don't listen, or at least what you're trying to tell them, it may seem like they don't listen, just like the parables that fall on the good ground and the stony ground and among the weeds. But sometimes it does take hold. Dad has been trying to teach son. Son hasn't been listening. He's got his course set. He knows where he wants to go and what he wants to do. And he's not going to be on the farm long. Dad knows it. The father sees this in his son's heart, and he knows there's not one thing he can do or say. You ever come to that conclusion about some people? Hey, there's not one thing I can do or say that's going to change your mind. You ever think about that about your kids or about a friend or about someone that comes and asks advice or that needs help? Hey, I'm telling you what to do. I'm telling you the direction to take. And they will not listen. You know they will not. And that's this son. Dad has talked to him before, and he will not listen. Can't change his desire. And the father's tried, all to no avail, and he knows it won't change. He knows his son has made a decision to leave one way or the other. He's going. He's going to do something. He's not going to stay here. He's not going to stay close to me, the father knows. And the father knows his son's going to have to learn by experience. You know, I like to learn by experience. Anyone else like me? You want to learn by experience? I do. I love to learn by experience. And the experience I love to learn by is someone else's. You know, I'm the youngest of 3 boys. And so I could see through their experience where they screwed up sometimes. See, Trenton, that's where you're lucky. Because you can look at your older brothers and see things that worked or didn't work and maybe make decisions about that. That's what I did. I could look at them and say, hey, this is what they said to Dad, and this is what happened. And so I'm not going to say that. Or this is what they did in life, and they wrecked the car and caused a lot of trouble. I'm not going to do that, okay? I'm going to do something else. So I like to live by or learn by experience as long as it's someone else's experience when it's a bad thing, right? And so that's just the way I am. And this kid was not that way. He's going to have to learn by his own experience. And it's going to cost him. It's going to cost him a lot, as we all know. So what about the father? The father's not stupid. Hey, don't look at this father and think, man, he got duped by that kid, right? Dad thought, hey, that kid's going to go off with all that money and be a rating success and come home with a bunch of more money. No, Dad knew. Don't think that he didn't know what was going to happen. That's why Dad was out there every day looking down the road for his son to come walking back. That's why Dad was out there when his son finally did come walking back. He was the first one to run to him because he knew what was going to happen. He knew his son was not going to be gone and be successful and make $1 million and come back a successful man. He knew he was going to come back a broken man. Dad knew that all along. That's why it's good to be wise, isn't it, dads? It's good to be a wise leader in your family. It's good to be a wise husband. It's good to be a wise father because people are depending on you. And this young man was depending on his dad. And the young man didn't even realize how much. And so, the father does see him coming back. He knew that he was broke. But he was looking down that road every day, every hour down that dusty road for that son to come walking back. For that son to come down that road, back home, back to him. He was looking for that. He knew that his trip would be a disaster. How long was he gone, I wonder? How long did it take to go through half of his dad's estate? Do you wonder about that? Did it take 3 months? Did it take a year? Probably not very long. It doesn't take very long to spend all your money on drinks and on women, on prostitutes, on drugs, whatever they had. I don't know what they did back then for drugs. Anyone know? Did they have cocaine back then? I don't know. Did they have marijuana? I'm sure they had something, and I'm sure this kid was into it, okay? I'm sure he figured it out. Anyway, at any time, at any age, you can always find ways to blow your money, right? There's always people out there willing to help you waste all your money, and Dad knew this son was going to be one of those. It was going to come a time when he was going to ruin his life out there, and he was going to come back. He knew it, and he was waiting for that time. Why? Oh, so he could tell the son, right, hey, you stupid. I told you what was going to happen. No, we don't see that at all, do we? He knew it would be a disaster. But he was waiting for that sweet return of his son when his son would have a changed heart. And when the son does return, he says this. He says, I'm not worthy to be called my dad's son. I want to be your servant. Look at verses 18 and 19. It says, here's what happens. Here's the decision that the young man comes to. I will arise, go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me as one of your hired servants. That's the realization that the young man has come to. I'm not worthy. I know what I've done wrong. I can see it clearly now. And all that is precipitated. Just one verse before that, in verse 17, it says this. It says, but when he came to himself. You ever catch that verse here in the story of the prodigal son, when he came to himself? You ever catch that, Levante? Armando, you ever catch that? No? When he came to himself. Thanks. Appreciate it. Man, he was waiting. The father was. For the son to come to this point in life. Man, the son had no idea this would happen. But he came to himself. He was down at the bottom. He was at the point in life where there was all the money that he thought his dad's, the happiness he thought his dad's money would bring. Man, it didn't pan out the way he thought it would. He's a broken young man now, a broken young man. And it says that he came to himself. Hey, you know how many Christians today have sought for the very same things that this prodigal son did? And how much we need to come to ourselves. And Dad was waiting, wasn't he? He said, I know what's going to happen. I'm willing to give him all this money, but I know what's going to happen. He's going to be a broken man one day, and maybe not very far in the future. And finally, the day comes when the young man wakes up, and the realization hits him. The truth hits him. The understanding finally dawns on him. It comes to him when he knows what truth is. Has that happened to you? At some point it has, hasn't it? Where truth strikes you, and you finally understand. You come to yourself about what is really going on in the world, about what life's about what your relationship to God ought to be, about what life is. I mean, you finally come to yourself, and that's this young man. He finally comes to himself, and he thinks, you know what? I'm going home. Dad he doesn't owe me anything now. I've taken all that he already owed me, and I've wasted it, but I can go back and work. I can at least go back and have a meal. I can at least go back and be one of the servants. At least I can do that. And I'm willing to do it. And that's what he does. He goes back to his dad. And you see, the father knew what no one else could see before the son left. He said, I know that my son needs a heart change more than anything else. My son needs to be different more than anything else in the heart. Hey, he's got everything else going for him. He's a good guy. He's strong. He's physically able. He's good looking. He's an heir to my estate. He's got everything, but his heart is messed up. That's what's wrong with my young son. And you know what? I'm willing to change my young son. I'm willing to do whatever I can do for him. And you know what the father was willing to do for his son? This father was willing to liquidate half of his estate to change his son. He knew there was no other way. He had talked. The son wasn't responding. He had tried to lead him. He had tried to love him into changing into the family business and to be in a relationship with him as the father. And the son wouldn't have any of it until he finally makes the extreme decision that, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do what he wants to do. And I think that will change him. I'm going to let him have half of my estate right now. I'm going to pay him that much money. How much money was that? Thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars? This guy wasn't unsuccessful. He was a successful man. And half of his estate would have been a very substantial amount of money. But is the son worth it? Hey, that's the question, isn't it? Is his young son worth it? You know what? Sometimes we write people off, don't we? We say, you're stupid. I've told you what to do, you won't do it. You know what? Forget you. You go off and make those mistakes. I don't want to have anything to do with you. I don't want to. We're like that older brother sometimes. But dad loves his young son. And he's willing to give half of his estate to see him come around. Is that what it's going to cost to get my young son back? I'm willing to pay it. Is that how much it takes? I'm willing to give it. Is there a price tag on his head? And if that's it, then I'm willing to write the check. I'll do it. He's worth it. He's my son. And I'm going to pay him I'm going to pay the money. It was worth it, no matter what, to see that son walking down that road as a broken man. That's what the father wanted to see. He wanted to see that son. And it's why we see in the story here, when he does see him walking, you know what the father does? He runs toward the son. Not something that they did back in those days. A Jewish man wouldn't run. It was not a good thing. I'm not a Jew, okay? I do run a lot. But back then, it was not a good thing. It was undignified. But when he sees his son coming, you know what he does? He runs toward his son. He's taken off toward his son. He sees a changed young man, a broken young man. He sees a heart change from that distance. He sees it. And he says, yes, the investment I made, half of my estate, that's the payback right there. My son is coming back as a broken man. That's what I want to see. I don't want to see him just coming back. I want to see him broken. I want to see him hurt. I want to see him on his knees. I want to see him as a changed heart. That's what I want to see. That's what the father wanted to see in the son. And he was willing to give everything to see that happen. That's why he was willing to write the check. That's why. He was willing to pay dearly to buy his son from apathy. He was willing to pay dearly to buy his son from lust and sinfulness. He was willing to pay everything to get his son back. And when he comes down that road, he knows, the investment has just paid off. The investment was worth it. Here he comes. I know he's wasted. The son didn't have to tell the father, right? Hey, the whole money's gone. Dad already knew that. It was obvious. He could probably smell his son, right? The son had been working with the pigs in the pigsty. He knew. He could smell it. He knew. He could look and see the unkempt appearance of his son. He knew what was going on. None of it mattered. Dad knew that my son is coming back. None of that other stuff brought fulfillment. And we know who the father is here, don't we? We know that it's a picture of God. That's who the father represents in our story. And we know who the Son is too, don't we? What's he willing to pay for you? What's he willing to pay for you? You know, he may very well give us things that we ask for. That we think are good things. But that he knows what the outcome is going to be from those things that he gives us. Maybe it's a good job, or maybe it's a relationship with a good person, or whatever. But those things lead us away from him somehow. I remember the story of my pastor would tell it from years back. This guy wanted a boat. He worked hard and he made enough money to buy his boat. And guess where he was every Sunday? He was out on the lake in his boat. Sometimes God will allow us. He'll bless us with things, I think. Only to let us mess up so that it draws us back to him. That's what he wants. This father wanted relationship. This father wanted his son back. You want to come up, Sam? Or whoever, Kenji? He wanted that son back. He was willing to pay everything. Sometimes when God blesses us, it draws us away, but he knows what's going to happen, right? It's not a surprise to God. But you know, the bigger picture there is just how much the Father is willing to give up for us. He's willing to give it all. And that was proved on the cross, wasn't it? We just celebrated Easter. We just celebrated a time when Jesus went to the cross, when God gave it all for a wayward son like me and wayward children like you. But you know what he wants? He wants to look down that road and see us coming to him in brokenness. See us coming to him with nothing to offer but ourselves. Our hands are empty. We've wasted it all. There's nothing we can give to the Father. There's no amount of money. There's nothing that we have to give. That's how the Son, or the Father, saw his Son walking back down that road with nothing in his hands, but just a changed heart. Isn't it funny that our Father, he'll give up just that much to have us back. He'll give up just that much to see us come into him with a broken heart, to see us come into him with a desire for relationship again. Isn't it crazy how this world just draws us away from God? We get so busy. So many things distract us. So many things are going on. So many things we want in the world. And all our Father wants is relationship with you and me. That's what he desires. Oh, we can find a million reasons not to go to church, right? And build a relationship. We can find a million reasons not to go to community group on a Sunday night because we don't want to mess with it. We find a million reasons not to participate with the youth program at the church that might need our help. We can find a million reasons to distance ourselves. And the Father allows it. He says, okay. Just like for the prodigal, he wrote that check. He said, okay. But he knows what the end of that is going to be. And he'll allow that. Because he knows, hopefully, one day they're coming back to me. One day they're going to be filled with all the world. It's not going to bring them the happiness and the things that they thought. And they're going to come back. They're going to come running back. And when they do, I'm going to run to them. I, as a dad, loves his kids. You know that? That's the picture of the Father that I want you to have this morning. Desperately waiting. Looking down the road every day, every minute for that child to come running back. And I know we would tell ourselves, hey, I'm not the prodigal. I'm not the prodigal. Are you? Are you not? Maybe you're not. I hope you're not. But you may be. I want you to think about it. In verse 17 it says, but when he came to himself. Have you come to yourself yet? Have you thought really hard about what God is trying to tell you? And when the son comes back, the father puts the best robe on, puts the ring on his finger, kills the fatted calf, and says, we're going to have a party. I just spent half of my estate to get my son back, and now it's paid off. Now it's paid off. Here he is, a broken and a changed and a new man. You know what he wants from you today? He'd give half of his estate. He gave his son. He'd give more. He wants you close to him today. Why don't we stand? Will you return to embrace the Father? Will you? Our band's going to do a song. You're welcome to come and pray. I'm going to pray for us just before that. If there's something you need to pray about, if you want to grab me, fine. If you just want to pray here at the altar. If you're convicted, now's the time. This is the time to make it right with the Father. Lord, we are so grateful for your blessings. What a beautiful story. Lord, of a loving dad. He knew the best way to get his son back. Lord, and I know that you know the best way to get us back. Lord, the world may captivate us. It may draw us away. It may bring us to a place that we didn't think we'd ever be. And now all we want is to draw back to you. Lord, and you're waiting for us. You're looking for us. You're running toward us, Lord, waiting for us to come back to you. Lord, I pray that that's us this morning, Lord. Make that us this morning, Lord. We pray that you would bless us here. That we be a people, Lord, who desire you more than anything in this world. That we be a people, Lord, who want you, who love you, who have come to ourselves, who have understood truth, who have understood the deception of this world, Lord. I pray that we be that people. Lord, draw us back to you. Lord, bless us this morning. Amen.
I can't believe it. Every single service they sing the same song. And we don't have lyrics. Oh, that's ridiculous.
Jesus is
it's my fault. It's my fault.
Jesus is calling. Oh, come to the altar. The Father's arms are open wide. Forgiveness restoring the precious blood of Jesus Christ. Leave behind your regrets and mistakes. Come today, there's no reason to wait. Jesus is calling. Drink sorrows and trade for joy. From the ashes of Jesus is coming. We'll come to the altar. The Father's arms are open wide. Forgiveness was born with the precious blood of Jesus Christ. Oh, come to the altar. The Father's arms are open wide. Forgiveness was born with the precious blood of Jesus Christ. Oh, Savior, isn't He wonderful? Sing hallelujah, Christ is risen. Bow down before Him, for He is wonderful. Sing hallelujah, Christ is risen. What a Savior, isn't He wonderful? Sing hallelujah, Christ is risen. Bow down before Him, for He is wonderful. Sing hallelujah, Christ is risen. Come to the altar. The Father's arms are open wide. Forgiveness was born with the precious blood of Jesus
Wow, what a blessing. This message to us from the heart of God. I love this message because it reveals to us a deeper level of His love. I think sometimes we don't understand how love works. We hear people say all the time, well, if God is real and God is loving, then how can He possibly allow bad things to happen in your life? Well, here we see an example, right? It's a deeper kind of love that God has. It allows the Son to go through this difficulty, knowing what it's going to lead to. I think we think of love as coming in the form of only blessings and happy things and good things. But God sees things from an eternal perspective. He's got a long-term view of His love, right? And so I know that prodigal son, years later, looks back on this time when he had such a disaster in his life. He looked back on that and he says to himself, that's the worst thing that ever happened to me. But you know, it's the best thing that ever happened to me. Because now I was able to come to myself and see what is really true. It was a really real blessing. If God allows you to go through some difficulties, you can know and trust that He has a long-term view in mind and He loves you and has a good outcome. So I'm going to remind you guys that tonight we have the community group meeting. Please come if you haven't come for a while. I think you're going to be excited. It's going to be a good night tonight. And I want to close by telling you the words that Paul said as he was saying goodbye to the leaders of the Ephesian church. He said this. He said, I commend you to the Word of God, which is able to build you up and give you an inheritance among those who are sanctified. So God bless you guys. Hopefully we'll see you tonight. And you're dismissed. Thank you.
What's up? I got you.
It's gonna blow your mind. Taco cat backwards is taco. Taco cat backwards is taco.
Smile.
Hey,
Oh, we got a lot of mouth.
Come on. Tyson.
what?
Thank you guys.
Yes, sir. Got a song request, man. Song request. Called I Smile by Kurt Franklin. You ever heard that song? No. It's called I Smile. Kurt Franklin. Oh, Kurt Franklin. I Smile. Real good song.
Eu tô mais no amor, eu vou pra café. Vou pra café, tô esperando lá. Larguei a vida boa, larguei a vida boa. Vou vida boa? Larguei. Só fazer um meu vital. Fala, Gui. O cara tá muito tecnológico. Com o Vitor é um, sem o Vitor é outro. Você tá falando?
That is just
Gente, você vai ou não vai? Daí é onde nós fazemos. Cara, é lindo cantar demais. I have 16. It's good, man. I just want 18. I just want 18.
É bom que eu até passo no outra casa. Eu preciso. Tem hora que
Sério?
eu vou ganhar um 7, mas eu vou ganhar um 7 lá, galera. Eu vou fazer algumas críticas, eu vou falar alguma coisa que aconteceu. Não, vou sério. Eu ganhei uma hora. Escrever no papel. Eu queria alguma coisinha lá e eu...
I just wanted to story. I just don't want
Hey, bro.
Good job, man.
Diretoria, né? Diretoria, com autoridade. Até sozinha na Brasília, entendeu? Eu viajei, autoridade.
Toda vez canta essa música, eu não tenho a lyrics dessa música.
Não,
tô fazendo agora. Porque não
sério?
Não, toda vez você
a gente
canta essa música,
ela,
só
a gente
canta ela.
com legenda, isso que eu tô aqui nessa igreja.
Não.
Esse também é novo tempo, vai fazer ela.
Não tem a lyrics ainda.
Sério?
Não, eu falei, não, vou fazer agora. Porque...
Faz uns 3 anos que ele...
Não, é de Natal. Nunca mais agora.
Eu vi isso aí, depois de meio horas.
2 dias já.
Bye, I'm sorry, bro. I'm sorry. See you.
Só festando, né, velho? Tadinho. Tadinho.
Ernest Iglesias.
Be still. Be still and try.